right. Hey, everybody. Hope everyone's having an awesome day. Today, we are talking about negotiating price reduction. Why do you want to know how to negotiate price reduction? Well, undoubtedly, when you get into your first real estate deal or your 100th real estate deal, sometimes the sellers are looking at their own property with these fabulous rosy colored sunglasses on, and they represent to you one truth when what you find out when you're in due diligence is there's a whole different truth. And that truth would require that there's more renovation needed, or maybe there's less rent coming in than you thought. Anyway, there's going to be some reason that you're going to need to be able to go back and say, hey, look, I still like this deal and I still want this deal, but I can't take this deal at this price. All right, so we're going to have to talk about getting the price lower in order for me to move forward, right? But there's a whole art and science to that, and that is really what we're going to be covering in depth today, so that you can powerfully step into those negotiations. Actually, there's two sets of negotiations. The first is just getting the property under contract to begin with. That in and of itself is there's going to be negotiating back and forth, particularly when you get into larger and larger properties like apartment buildings. All right, but then the other part of negotiating is once you're going for the price reduction. So we're going to talk about both today. All right, so I know that probably some of you already know us, and there might be a few of you who don't, so I'm just going to quickly introduce ourselves to you. We are Jen and Stacy Conkey, and we are the founders of Warriors of Wealth. We are located in San Diego, California, and we've been investing in real estate since 2003, so this is our 18th year in business. We've worked in 14 different markets across the US, and everything that we've done in investing, we've done remotely. So we live in San Diego, but we don't invest in San Diego. We invest in markets that make more sense for cash flow, but we don't go to those markets. We live here, we stay here, we've got 4 kids. There's no way we could be hopping on a plane all the time, but we have learned to run our business from wherever we are, as long as we have an internet connection. All right. Jen has a background in corporate America. She was a leader for 22 years, working at some of the biggest companies out there. And she did real estate investing as really her side business. And she did it throughout her career. She was eventually able to retire and just focus on real estate. I'm Stacy. I worked in accounting and I was a CFO. I ended up leaving corporate America to invest in real estate full time. And I've been coaching investors for more than 10 years. It is really a passion of mine. So Jen and I have really different and extraordinarily complementary skills when it comes to really helping people excel. And so we combined our skills to create the Warriors of Wealth real estate investing coaching and mastermind program. So we're excited to be with you today, and we're excited to just speak not just knowledge into your life, but also encouragement and just to let you know, whatever it is that you want in life. I know it's probably different from what everyone else around you wants. It's yours to be had, but you'll have to get uncomfortable in order to get it, right? And so what helps you get out of being uncomfortable? Knowledge, right? So that's what we're here to do today, is start to strip away some of the fogginess or confusion about that scary thing of, oh my gosh, what if I go into this deal and the numbers don't work? What do I do? We're going to teach you that today so you can start to feel more comfortable about that part of the process, so that you can actually start moving forward and creating that passive income to create the freedom that you want in life. All right. So I know not everybody has seen our 4 steps class or webinar, but for those of you who do or have seen it, we the way that we kind of break things down to try to take a million moving parts and move it into kind of 4 separate and distinct areas. We have 4 steps. We call it our 4-step process of select, investigate, close, and manage. And I'm not going to go a lot into it because we have an entire training on what each of those steps are. But when people ask, well, where does that fit in with your 4-step process? When you're doing price reduction, it fits into the investigate area, because it comes up when you're in due diligence on a property. So you're in due diligence, you're within your inspection period, and you find out, oh shoot, there's something wrong with the property that I didn't know was wrong, and I have to have a price reduction. So that happens during the investigate process. Once you're done with all of the price negotiations and the due diligence and everything else, then we move into the 3rd step, which is close. All right, so we're in our investigate step here. All right, so there's a couple other useful trainings, and I'll talk towards the end about how to get some of them, but I just want you to know, as you're starting to build your foundation, if you're already investing and you're just trying to scale, then you absolutely are going to want to watch the apartment investing training. If you've done some deals, but they've been in your local market, but you've never done a deal somewhere else, and you'd like to learn how to do that so you can create location freedom, you're going to want to make sure you watch our remote investing training. 4 steps to cash flow is kind of like our absolute baseline. It starts to lay all the foundation for everything you're going to need for investing in passive income and starting to build that long-term wealth. And then the BRRR, is for those of you who are looking to create cash flow and equity in the same project, but that requires rehab. So if you're willing to rehab, you can really start to jump your balance sheet up pretty high, pretty fast when you learn the BRRRR strategy. So if you haven't already seen that webinar or that training, you're going to want to see that one as well. All right. So like I said, at the end, I'll talk about how you can get one or more of those, depending on where you're at and what you need. All right. So let's ask the question, why even bother negotiating? Like, what's the point? All right, so I'm going to give you some examples. And a lot of what I'm going to do in this class is I'm going to give you examples, not so much of mine and Jen's, because I can give you examples of our stuff all day long, but what we've learned over time as educators is when I show you deals that we've done, you're like, oh yeah, of course you could do it. You've been doing it for 18 years. It's going to be easy for you. And that's true, although it's not really true because no real estate is easy, but obviously it's going to be easier when you have all the reps we do. What I'm going to show you is examples of other people who are in your same position or just a little bit ahead of you to show you how they have used this information that we're going to be doing today. All right, so these are just screenshots from our messenger string within our mastermind. So this one was Steve, and Steve, you've probably heard of him. You probably see him. He's bought a whole bunch of duplexes and closed on a big apartment building and stuff like that. So this was one of the earlier ones, and he was just letting the group know, hey, my duplex deal accepted the price reduction. The loan's ready to close, just waiting for the appraisal Monday. And then he was reporting about another project he had. His rehab is getting close. So on that particular duplex, he negotiated a $7,500 price reduction. And frankly, he didn't even need it. When he was talking to us about it, he said, I didn't actually need it, but I decided I might as well ask. And he got it. So now he just made the deal even sweeter. All right. Who's next? Oh, Lupe. So Lupe has really been a fun story for us because she had taken 2 previous training programs before she came to Warriors of Wealth, and she never did a deal. And when she came here, our whole motto and our whole mission is literally to help people cross the finish line and do deals. Stop just getting educated. There's no point in getting educated if you're not going to take action, right? We want you doing deals. So we're really excited. Lupe actually closed her first deal in August. And then she closed one in September, closed another one in October, got into a joint venture on 18 units in November, and just closed another one last month. So anyway, she got like a ton of traction. But anyway, this is her signing on her first one. She says, here's me signing my life away, finally closed. On that particular deal, it was actually a performing cash flow property. It was a duplex. And when she got her inspection, she found out that there were repairs that were needed. The basement had some repairs and also the roof. So she ended up getting a $6,800 credit at closing, but not a credit to her. So this is going to be a really interesting one. And I'm going to show you her closing statement when we get to that point, because I want to show you not only about negotiating the price reduction, but also how to strategically choose what's going to be the best method based on how you're financing it. Okay, so we're going to go we're going to get kind of advanced in this one. And I recognize that not everybody's going to understand what I'm talking about, and it's okay. Don't freak out if you're like, whoa, you lost me. Just pick up the pieces that you can, because every single time you arrive at one of these trainings and you watch it, your foundation is getting wider and wider and wider. And so you're going to start to understand things you didn't understand even a week ago. All right, but we're going to get into some kind of advanced tactics on how to make that decision of what kind of price reduction to take and how. All right, so that was Lupe on her first deal. All right, who's next? Oh, yes. So Joni was another, oh my gosh, she's such a great story. She's another one. She did a program years and years ago and ended up buying an apartment building, just didn't get the kind of help that she needed, and it turned into a disaster. And it took her a very long time to be willing to put her pinky toe back into the water, but she's like, real estate's in her soul. She's been wanting to do it for years. So we're really excited for her. So Joni not only got a 9-unit apartment building, she also got a 6-unit apartment building. So in 2 months, she closed on 2 different apartment buildings. Both are in New Orleans, and she lives in Orange County, California. So they're remote. And anyway, so she was going through the negotiations, doing what we taught her, and she was able to get a $50,000 price reduction on the 9-unit apartment building. So like some of these numbers, these are like some serious money. But even $7,500 on a duplex, like that's awesome. That's $7,500. back in your account or on your balance sheet. All right, so that was Joni. Who's next? Oh, Battelle. So Battelle had a 9-unit motel that she was buying. It was a value add project. She was going in. It needed about $250,000 worth of work. It needed a lot of rehab. And she's basically turning it into a 9 units of Airbnb. So anyway, when she was going through that whole process, and we'll get to hear from her in a little bit too. I have a quick little clip from her, but she ended up getting a $70,000 price reduction on her 9-unit. So you gotta learn these things, because man, it will really pay you. All right, and then finally, it's not finally, actually I have 2 more. Steve, who is the same Steve as earlier, negotiated a $45,000 price reduction on his 18-unit building that he closed in November. So that was amazing and awesome. And then Temi just closed on this a couple weeks ago, and he actually, this isn't the one he closed on. He closed on a 6-unit a couple of weeks ago, and now he has another 6-unit under contract. It's a value add project, and on that one, because he knows his market so well now, because everything he had to do to get that first apartment building, he knew exactly what this is worth. And he went in with that offer. He was negotiating hard, because he's like, look, you're asking way too much. 325, there's absolutely no way. If it was totally renovated, maybe, but it's not. It needs, $100,000 worth of work, something along those lines. So he ended up getting the offer accepted at $280,000. So he already got, what is that, $45,000 off the asking price. And then after inspection, went back and renegotiated all the way down to $240,000. So he got another $40,000 price reduction. So all in all, he ended up paying, or he's going to pay, $85,000 less than what the seller was asking. So that was a huge win. So learning to negotiate will literally change your financial future. So that's why we're doing this today. I hope you guys are excited. All right, so that's over $220,000 in savings. That's just 5 of our mastermind members. Like we have a whole bunch more that we haven't even put in here. One of these days I'll add everybody in, and I'll add it all up and see where we're at. But that's just 5 people and their deals, and just what a tremendous difference it makes once you learn how to negotiate. All right, and we want to teach you how to do the same. Okay, so there's really 2 primary areas that you're talking about negotiations. One is the initial offer and the negotiations that go along with that. And for example, Battelle, when Battelle went, the seller had owned the property for a very, very long time, and he wanted $1,750,000. This is for her 9-unit motel. And so, I mean, the negotiating process was literally weeks. And she was my one-on-one student, and she kept pushing back, like, I don't want to keep negotiating. I don't want to lose the deal. And I was like, no, I'm telling you, there's more room in it. So anyway, but it was the first time she'd ever been in that position. And so it was super uncomfortable, but, just coached her through it, kept pushing her, like, go a little bit further. And she ended up just negotiating a tremendous deal. So that's during the offer process, right? Just like what I was just talking about with Temi. Temi just did the exact same thing. And then there's a second set of negotiations, is when you're done with your due diligence and you find, well, you know what, there's more wrong with the property than I thought or than you disclosed, and we need to get the price lower. So in both of those deals, for Battelle and Temi, they got a huge discount off the initial, and then also got a further reduction. And I'll go through Battelle's numbers a little bit further into the presentation, but a further reduction after they did the due diligence. It's one of the reasons due diligence is so critical. Like, first of all, you got to know what you're buying. You're buying something that's going to be a long-term asset, so you can't make mistakes. A simple mistake on an apartment building could literally cost you $100,000 or more. It's very easy because of the way that they're valued. So due diligence is critical, but the beauty of due diligence is it allows you to go back and retrade or renegotiate the deal to one that's better for you. All right. And then negotiations post-inspection, Battelle, Joni, Steve, Lupe, all of them were examples of when they went back and negotiated. One of the things that is a strategy in our business is when you're making an offer and maybe you can't exactly get quite to what the seller's asking, but you're not too far off. Because oftentimes we'll make an offer or we'll calculate an offer and we're completely on the other side of the world, right? We're nowhere near what the seller wants. Well, I mean, I'm not expecting we're going to come to an agreement, but I'll still throw out the offer. I mean, we just got word from Casey, who's in our mastermind, like an hour ago, that she just got a 4-plex accepted. And the thing that like blew her mind about it is her offer was $40,000 less than what the seller was asking. or actually, I don't know how, maybe her offer was even lower, but through negotiations, she ended up settling on a price that was $40,000 less than asking. So sometimes people say, well, there's no good deals. And what I tell them is you have to make the offers. You don't know if there's a good deal or not because you don't know if the seller's motivated or not until you actually make the offer and give them a chance to come back and respond. So Casey just got a fourplex, a cash flowing fourplex under contract for 40 grand lower than what the seller was asking. So anyway, but we're super excited. We're going to see where that one goes. Okay. Anyway, so I want to show you real quick. I'm going to show you a video with Patel in just a minute, but I want to give you a little bit of background on what it is. Because I know when I was new, I like hearing stories of people, and that's cool. But I really love it if I can at least get a quick visual. So I'm going to kind of talk you through what this deal was, how it went, the negotiations, etc., and then and give you some visuals along the way. All right, so this is Patel. And the thing that was actually really fun and cool about Patel is when we first met Patel, she had shared with us that she had moved from Israel, and I don't know how old she was. Maybe she was like 20, so like young. And her whole dream, she moved to New York, and her whole dream was to own a motel or a hotel. And she's like, and I was always going to call it Hotel Batel. So we've been saying that for a year, Hotel Batel. And when we first started working together, she was just going to do a fix and flip. But then when COVID hit, her current Airbnb business in San Diego just tanked because all of San Diego tourist stuff stopped. She was now in a position to go and buy a motel that she would Airbnb. And so now she has her Hotel Batel. She didn't call it that, but anyway, it's just a really cool story because it literally was her dream for her whole life. And now she did it. I know she's going to go on to do even bigger things. She's an amazing human being. And anyway, so I'm really excited to show you guys her deal. But this is her hotel in Florida. So it's like nothing fancy, but holy cow, the upside on this thing. When I was looking at the numbers with her when she first got it, I was like, wow, oh, you're going to make a lot of money on this. And she's really excited about it. But that's her hotel. And then this is just some pictures of the renovations that were going on. But she had 9 units, and she was basically getting like 2 units done at a time. Well, she's now got 4 units completely done. Professional photography is done, advertised on Airbnb. Now she's working on the other 5 units. She's got 4 units completely booked out all the way through April already. So anyway, this is just very exciting. So she closed on it in September, and took a while for the renovations to get started because there was a lot of permitting issues they had to deal with. And they're doing big repairs, like they were putting on a new roof. You can see the giant equipment there. They had to like redo the pool. Anyway, that's her husband, Adam. So anyway, they're really fun. Okay, so hopefully you guys will be able to hear this. I want to let you hear from Batel a little bit about her negotiating process.
For example, when I was making my offer, I negotiated down to what I would feel comfortable with, and then I was coached to keep negotiating. And I didn't want to because I didn't want to kill the deal, but I kept negotiating, and I got it down $70,000. And I also got better financing terms. So anyways, I just want to thank Jen and Stacy for their guidance, and for this fantastic program, and for helping my dreams come to fruition. Thanks again.
All right. It's just so funny because I can literally remember, I don't do a lot of one-on-one coaching anymore because we have other coaches, and they do the coaching. I do all the group coaching and oversee the whole program. But Batel was one of our earlier people, and I was coaching her one-on-one. And the way that we would communicate back and forth was through Marco Polo, which is it's a visual app. So when she has a question or something, she would, record a little video and send it, and then I would get a notification and I would look at it. So I can literally remember standing in my kitchen and I'm watching her Marco Polo saying, okay, I got him down to this. I feel like that's fine. I don't feel like we need to negotiate anymore. I feel like he came down a lot already. And I can literally remember standing there looking at my phone, recording it. I was like, no, Batel, there's still room. And what if you going back one more time saves you $25,000 or 0.25% of interest, which is going to save you a whole bunch of money over time? Like, don't give up yet. And part of it was because, when you've been doing it for 18 years, it's not like we know everything. We can't project everything, but there's a lot of things that you can see when you've done it so many times that someone who's newer can't see. And based on everything she had told me about the seller, I was like, you're not in any danger of losing the deal. Like, he is very bought in on you, and you guys are very close, but do not stop negotiating. You have at least one more round. So she fought me on it a lot, but ultimately she went ahead and did it. And so here's how it all worked out. The original asking price was $1,750,000. It was a seller finance deal. Like, everything about this deal is flipping amazing. It was so awesome. So he wanted 1.75 million and he wanted $500,000 down. And she was like, I cannot put $500,000 down because it needs 250,000 in repairs, and I don't have that much cash, right? So over the course of two and a half weeks, we got the price negotiated down to 1,625,000. And that might still seem like a lot of money, although it depends on where you live. You might be like, that's not a lot at all. Other people might be like, that's huge. But either way, what it is, it's a huge reduction from what the seller was asking. It's $125,000 less than what he was asking and wanting for the property. So that was a big one right there, just getting the purchase price down so much. The other thing that we just kept hammering was the down payment. And she's like, I mean, I could go higher, but I just really, this is what she's telling me, I just really don't want to. I feel like it's going to squeeze us. We're going to be trying to do renovations, and I know sometimes things go over. I don't want to end up in a position where I'm squeezed. Like, then do not go over 300,000. So he slowly, like in $25,000 increments, went from 500,000 all the way down to 300. So they had agreed on 1.625 million, $300,000 down. And then we're moving forward. She got into due diligence, got all the due diligence complete. And she was like, you know what? There's actually some pretty big repairs needed. And I think it was like plumbing and electrical, a couple things that she did not know about. And so what she told me was, I mean, the deal is still a killer deal, and I don't actually need any kind of price reduction, but I want the seller to kick in 25,000. There's all these things wrong. He didn't tell me. I didn't know. And if I would have known, I would have maybe offered less, and I'm like, okay, sure, we'll run with that. Sounds good. And I said, okay, so you want $25,000? She says, yeah. I'm like, okay, so go back to him and tell him, based on everything that's wrong, there's all these things, make it seem super dramatic, which is what I'm going to teach you how to do in today's class. Like, this is going to be drama 101. Go back and basically say, I need to have $50,000 off this price. Otherwise, this deal is not going to work for me. And so she was like, oh my gosh, he's going to say no way. I'm like, so let him say no way. It's not like you're out of contract. Right now, you're just you're having a conversation. So she went back and said that. And he was like, absolutely not. I've already come down all this money. It's not happening. But look, I had been with her during this whole thing. He had said that 4 different times before with other things. And then a couple days later, he'd be like, well, okay. So I was like, that's fine, Battelle. Just don't say anything. Just be like, okay, well, the deal doesn't work at that. Don't sign any paperwork. Don't do a release or anything, obviously, because you do want the deal. But like, it's this whole dance and this whole game that happens. And sure enough, 2 days later, he's like, well, okay. I mean, I can't give you $50,000 off. I'm already taking such a bath. By the way, so she has it under contract for $1.625 million. He paid like $275,000 for the property. All right, so he's not taking any bath whatsoever. But that was his position. I think he just liked to negotiate. So anyway, so he's like, I can't do 50,000, but I'll meet you in the middle and I'll give you 25,000, which is what she wanted anyway, right? So anyway, that was how that all played out. But make no bones about it. When you're doing this, it's scary, especially when you're new. You're so nervous, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose the deal. You can't lose the deal unless you back out, right? So you're fine, but it is like a nail biter when you're going through it. So I just wanted to share Battelle's story with you, because she was like, oh my gosh, why are you going to make me do this? And I'm like, hey man, $25,000 is $25,000. Like, you gotta go for everything that you can before you settle. But man, she was a little nauseous about it, but she ended up with a great deal. So at the very end, after doing the inspection, getting the reduction, her final purchase price was $1,600,000. So she got it for 150 less than what the seller was asking. And she actually got the seller the seller to agree to a lower down payment, $270,000, and then she put the $30,000 difference in an escrow for the roof. And the reason, there was all sorts of other drama that went on with that deal at the last minute, which as there always is at the 11th hour, but the seller wanted to have hurricane insurance because he's now the lender. He's like, well, I need you to have hurricane insurance, except he never had hurricane insurance, and the building was actually not insurable for hurricane insurance because the roof was bad. So anyway, he's like, well, I don't want to close because how do I know you're going to fix the roof and get insurance? And what if there's a hurricane and now I don't have the security? So that was where we came up with a creative approach so that she could meet the needs of the seller, but not come out of pocket anymore. Anyway, so that was a really cool deal. There's a lot of negotiation through that whole thing. All right. So what I want to do is just kind of walk you through, like, what does that whole process look like, and when does this negotiations like come into play? All right. So depending on what level of real estate you're working on, if you're working in 1 to family, or if you're working, 1 to 4 family, or if you're doing 5+, 1 to 4 family, we consider residential. 5+, we consider to be commercial or apartments. All right. So if you're doing 1 to 4 family, the way that we'll make our offer is we'll send an email to our realtor with, here's our offer terms. Here's the address, the price, the earnest money deposit. Here's my inspection period. Here's my closing period. Here's the name I want you to put the contract in. Here's any special clauses, right? So we actually send an email to our realtor. The realtor takes that information. They put it onto the state contract. So one of the questions I get a lot from people who are brand new is, oh, I don't know how to fill out the contract. What am I going to do? Well, if you're using realtors, which is that's a big part of how we get our deal flow, they're going to handle it. You don't need to handle it. You don't need to worry about it. The main thing you need to do is communicate the information to them. And then when they put it on the contract, review it and make sure it's correct. There's usually 1 or 2 errors the first time, so you're going to review it. If there's something that needs to be fixed, you go back to the agent with complete confidence as a boss, as a CEO, and just say, hey, thank you so much for getting this ready. I noticed a couple of small things that need to be changed. So go ahead and change, and then explain what it is. Go ahead and make those couple of changes, send it back. I'll get it signed right away. We can get that submitted. Okay, so that's how it works when you're in 1 to 4 family. When you're in doing 5+ units, you could also do it that way, but it's more common to submit a letter of intent, which is basically a non-binding document that kind of just says, hey, I'm interested in the property. Here's some of the terms I was thinking. It's the same kind of things: price, earnest money deposit, inspection period, closing period, financing, etc. And then that way you can kind of go back and forth with the seller without getting into the long contract. Once all the terms are agreed to, then it goes into a purchase and sale agreement. All right. So however the first offer is communicated to the seller, there's one of 3 things that will happen. You'll either find out, yes, it's been accepted, no, it has not been accepted, or you'll have a counter offer. Actually, there's a 4th option, which is you hear nothing, which unfortunately that's fairly common, right? So we obviously don't want to have that. Oops, have my alarm going off? No, bueno. Okay. Anyway, so if they say yes, then you're going right into due diligence, right? If they say no, the deal's pretty much dead. If they counter offer, now you have a decision to make. So if you're close, this is what I was starting to allude to earlier. If you're close in your offer price to what they're asking, then in my opinion, you're going to be fine to go ahead and accept the offer and just lock the deal up and get into due diligence and find out what the actual numbers are. And as you're getting closer to the end of your due diligence period and you know what your numbers are, at that point you can go back and renegotiate and go for a price reduction. And there's several different ways you could do it. I'm going to show you a list of different ways, and I'm going to show you an actual example of a price reduction report that I had put together for one of our properties a few years ago, just so you can get a visual for what that looks like. Okay, so when I say counter offer strategy, that's what I'm referring to. So if the counter offer, you accept it, you're just doing it so you can stop competing with other investors who might be trying to buy the same property, and now you have it locked up. All right, so you're doing your due diligence, you find out, oh, okay, yes, I'm going to have to pay less than this in order to make this deal work. That's when the price reduction comes into play. All right, even if you get, even if they say yes right off the bat, and you're not going back and negotiating back and forth, that's still your opportunity once you're in due diligence to go back in and renegotiate. All right, when you're doing a letter of intent in an apartment building and you're going back and forth with the seller, just be aware that that is not uncommon for that to be a fairly lengthy process, because it just is. All right, so be patient as you're going through it, but be diligent. Make sure there's never a day passing without you being in contact. But you're going to go back and forth until you guys can meet in the middle and find some place that works for with you and the seller. All right, so let's talk a little bit about post-inspection or post-due diligence negotiations. So it kind of depends on the type of deal. Is it, the BRRRR strategy? Is it, or a value-add apartment building? Is it a straight purchase or a stabilized apartment building purchase? So depending on what kind of deal it is, and in combination with what type of financing you're getting, that's going to drive to some degree the strategy you use or that you choose to be compensated for whatever was wrong with the property that your initial offer didn't account for. Okay, so some of the options are just straight up price reduction. I offered 170,000, but there's $20,000 of stuff wrong with the property that I didn't know about, so I need the price reduced to 150. Okay, so then I'm getting my loan and everything is based on 150. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to just get a credit at closing. All right, so you tell the seller, okay, I'll still pay you the 170, but I want a $20,000 credit at closing. Okay, and then a third option is doing something that's some kind of blend and that's creative, because part of the challenge when you're going to be getting a price reduction because of a major repair, if it's a performing property or a property where you're getting a conventional mortgage, if the bank, it's the underwriting department specifically, but if the bank sees that you're getting a repair credit for some kind of big thing, they're going to be like, whoa, 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 hold on a second. What's wrong with this property, right? Because they don't lend on fixers. Hard money lenders wouldn't care. Like, what difference does it make to them, right? But to a conventional lender, they absolutely might see that and go, hold on a second. What is this, $7,000 credit? I thought this property was in good condition. So you have to be strategic sometimes when you find out information that might jeopardize your loan, but that you could handle and get fixed fairly quickly, right? So that's when you might have to get creative to not have it be so obvious what's happening. I'm going to show you an example of them, but some of the ideas around that is you could get maybe a credit for your closing costs to the extent that your bank allows that. You might be able to say, okay, well, the seller will pay for the next 2 years of property taxes, and I'll get a credit for that. Like, it can be part of the negotiation. And really the whole point was just to compensate you for the repair that you needed to do. Okay, so there's some creative things that you can do. The main thing is when you end up in a situation where you need to renegotiate the deal, or you need to get a price reduction, make sure you're talking to your lending officer, and you have to be careful with the conversation, because you don't want to just be like, hey, what do I do? The roof is totally shot and I want to get a credit. Will the bank allow that? You really can't tell your loan officer that, because you're going to put them in a position where they're like, oh, it's going to be difficult for them to actually tell you how to get around that without being in jeopardy with their job. So what a better way to approach that is letting them know, like, hey, I'm just curious. Like, so if something came up in our inspection and it needed to be repaired, and let's say it was a big thing, and I don't know if it would be or not. I just, I have my inspection coming up, and it's probably really behind you. What would I do? What should I do in that case? And you could just be like, I'm just curious, like, what would that look like? And then you can get some advice from that lender so that you know how to best present the deal, or how it needs to look at closing, to make sure that the financing actually goes through. All right. So this is Steve. I have a quick clip of him talking about the price reduction that he needed to do on his 18 unit. The thing that's so funny, that picture on the left of Steve is everybody in the mastermind was just cracking up, because he had a hunting trip that he had planned for a very long time, and it ended up being like 2 weeks before the closing of this 18 unit building. And we were like, oh my gosh. But he had cell reception. So he was literally texting and emailing from a tree, talking to the title company on the phone from a tree with a bow and arrow, because he was hunting. So anyway, that's why he's in camouflage, because it was that time. So he just kind of cracks us up. All right. One of the other things about that 18 unit that's kind of cool, you guys might have heard us mention it before, and if not, I'll just tell you, these are all members of our mastermind, and they all partnered up with Steve, and they all bought this 18 unit apartment building. And this apartment building was also seller financed. It was another one that got seller financing, but it still required a $500,000 down payment plus renovation money and stuff. So Steve needed to raise other funds above and beyond what he had available. And some of the other mastermind members jumped in and are doing the deal as a JV joint venture with them. So that is really cool. And this is what the building looks like. All right, let's hear from Steve.
So it's 18 unit, actually 2 buildings and a piece of land in Miami. And during the inspection, it had in-wall air conditioner units, and those tend to drip moisture into the wall. So because of that, I got some estimates on HVAC units. So getting that, and then I also got an estimate to replace all the windows. That turned out to be like $90,000. So I actually asked for a price reduction at that point because of the inspection, and again, not having to do the windows, we kind of are talking about whether we really even need to do them or not. I asked for $90,000, but the seller agreed to $45,000.
All right, I recognize that the end was a little abrupt, but anyway, so that was that deal where he asked for $90,000 and ended up negotiating a $45,000 price reduction. What he's referring to is, you see on that left picture, that little wall AC unit, those are the ones that were leaking into the walls. And so they were able to take that and super dramatize it. Like, whoa, I mean, there could be mold inside all the walls. And that's part of the strategy when you're doing a request for a price reduction, is to make everything look as dramatic as possible. And I'm going to show you a way that you can do that, like in the form of a report. And then it's the new AC, and that was after the unit was done. And the building that he bought ended up being, it was occupied. The whole building was occupied except one unit. So they were just renovating this unit, and then one person moved out. Now they're renovating that unit. So it was a great property because they have cash flow coming in while they're improving the net operating income and the value of the property as a result. All right, so let's talk about the actual communicating what you need. Like, what are your different options? All right, one is a price reduction report. Another is you could just send a simple email or write a letter to the seller. It's always going to go through your agent. So just be aware that you're always going to communicate to your agent, and your agent will forward that information on to the seller's agent, who will then present it to the seller. It's super inefficient. I always wish I could just deal directly with the seller, but that's just not how it works typically. So anyway, unless you get permission to talk directly to the seller, you want to make sure that you're communicating everything to your buyer's agent. Okay. Another thing is you could basically give them the inspection report. My favorite approach is really doing a combination. It's where you're taking the inspection report and you're combining it with a price reduction report. And that's the sample I'm going to show you, just to give you some ideas. There's no one way to do that. There's no right way. There's no wrong way. But from a strategy standpoint, the more solid your request seems, the more validated, the more data you have to support your claim, the more likely it is that the seller is going to, give a little in this area. Okay. And then one other thing before I show you that form or that format is, I want you to just be aware that when you go to real estate investing, no matter how much I could teach you, there's always going to be like these weird little one-off situations. So I'll give you an example of this. This report that I had spent a pretty good amount of time creating, I was like, I'm making this one really good because I know it's going to the bank and I want it to be super professional and complete. Anyway, so I give it to a realtor after I created it, got it to the realtor. The realtor goes to give it to the listing agent, and the listing agent's like, nope, I can't accept anything. The only way that, and it was a Fannie Mae property, so it was a bank foreclosure. She said the only way that Fannie Mae will accept an offer is or a reduction request. You just have to go online and put in the dollar amount. They won't even let you say why. And I realized, because once they know what's wrong, once they've been informed what's wrong, they have to disclose it. So they would not allow a situation where they could be informed, because then they could continue to just market the property as it was without disclosing things. Even though we had the information, they wouldn't receive it. So just be aware that sometimes that's going to happen. And you just have to be willing to like ebb and flow through that and make adjustments. All right. So, but what I'm going to show you is this is like our favorite way. So what I just blocked off some of this stuff in orange that was specific to us and our company, our address and stuff like that. But what you have at the top is your company name, your contact name, address, phone number, right? All your information. You have the date, the property address, and then it starts off with, you know, dear sir or madam, it seems pretty formal, but we're excited about purchasing the property at 123 Main Street. We found some additional issues during our investigation of the subject property. We're still willing to purchase the property as is, and we're not requesting that you repair anything. Yet, due to the additional rehab expenses discovered through our inspection, we are requesting a reduction in the purchase price in the amount of $41,000 and change. The excerpts below are from the complete home inspection report provided by Northern Lights Home Inspection. So I was specifically referencing that we had a home inspection done and what the company's name was, so that they know we're not just making these things up. Like, this is from a third-party inspector. We've selected a handful of items to demonstrate the extent of the damage to this property. The full report is available at your request. So we didn't just send our home inspection report. What I did was I picked out the things that were the most dramatic, and I took a screenshot and I included it. But on page 1, so where it says excerpt 1, 2, 3, 4. So excerpt 1, basically what I'm doing is I'm summarizing what I'm going to put below that on the next page. So excerpt 1 was crawl space, significant amount of garbage and debris, substantial rodent intrusion, and damage found throughout. Inspector was unable to inspect full crawl space due to the amount of debris. All right. And then on the next page of the report, I have excerpt 1, which is, it's the same language because I really wrote it here, then I went and pasted it on page 1. And then I basically went and used my snipping tool on my computer, and I snipped that part of the home inspection. Really, it was anything, that particular inspector put anything in red that was like danger or a major concern. So red always stands out as like this, oh no, something's wrong. So I was like, okay, cool, that looks super dramatic. So I highlighted that and pasted it. All right, and then just did the same thing. Excerpt 2, potential foundation issues. Currently, there are inadequate foundation support posts. Home is being supported by piles of stone, wood, and blocks. All right, and so same thing. We take an excerpt from the home inspection report. It's in red, major concern, talks about the subfloor installation, that crawl space has been damaged by rodents. Anyway, so 3, 4, et cetera. I didn't put all the pages in here, but you get the idea, right? So you're basically going and taking like the biggest, most problematic things, putting a picture of it. Even if you didn't have a home inspection, you just had your contractor out there, you should still put pictures and then highlight what are they seeing in the pictures. Like in this one, anytime you can say unsafe, that's always a good thing, right? So current electrical service is outdated and unsafe. Knob and tube wiring found in multiple parts of the home, making home uninsurable by some insurance companies. So we're letting them know, like, look, this is a big problem. We are going to have to fix it. You are going to need to come down in your price if we're going to do this deal. And that's really the whole point, is just to keep making that point over and over and over, but with different things. So I just kind of jumped to excerpt 8, but we had basically a page for each thing. All right. And at the very end, it was almost kind of like a conclusion. So we said, based on the findings of our internal investigation, we're asking that you reduce the price of the home to $128,000 and change. We are still willing to purchase the home in its as-is condition. We are asking for the above reduction in price due to the condition of the home. It is in far worse condition than we originally anticipated. Thank you for your understanding and quick response. We look forward to closing on this home in the same time frame we originally proposed. All right. Whew, tired from all that reading. Okay, so the whole point in saying that very last sentence is that at this point, let's say you had a 10-day inspection and a 30-day close. At this point, you're probably on day 9. So if they say no to your price reduction and you back out, they are going all the way back to square one and just putting the property on the market. Then they have to wait for a buyer. The buyer's going to want an inspection period, like all of that. So part of the strategy in doing price reduction is knowing, like, if it's day 9, it's as close to the end as I can get. That's going to be the best time to have the best opportunity for the seller to be like, oh, all right, you know what? Fine. I'm going to have my paycheck in 3 weeks. In 21 days, I'm going to have my money and I'm out of here. I'm done with this property. All right. So that's the whole point of you saying or stating that you look forward to closing on the home in the same time frame, so that they know, oh, wow, okay, if I'm just willing to be a little flexible in my pricing, I could be done with this thing. All right, so you want to make sure that that gets communicated. All right, so I want to show you some examples. So there's 3 examples I'm going to show you, and I'm actually going to show you like the closing statement, what the closing statement looks like when you do these 3 different types of price reduction. All right, the first one is a straight price reduction. Like I mentioned earlier, you originally had it under contract for one amount, and then you do your inspection, and then you agree with the seller, we're going to buy it for a lower amount. That's the straight purchase reduction. The next is going to be a credit to the buyer at closing, and the third is going to be a repair escrow held from a seller's funds, which is the one from LuPay. Now, from a strategy standpoint, when you have a situation where you're going to get a reduction in price, if you're getting a conventional loan, and let's say you're getting a conventional loan for 80% of the purchase price, if there's some chunky size repair that you're going to need to do, it doesn't really serve you or behoove you to just take a price reduction. So for example, let's say, I'm just going to make up some numbers. Let's say that the original purchase price was $100,000. And we found that there's a $10,000 thing wrong with the home, right? So the seller can say, okay, fine, we'll take the price down to 90,000. Well, now you're going to go get a loan for 80% of the 90,000. So that's going to be $72,000. All right. So now you're going to have to come up with $18,000 to close, which you already knew that 20%, but you also got to come up with the other $10,000 to fix the property. So now it's going to take $28,000, plus closing costs and impounds and all that stuff. So it takes $28,000 to do it. Right. Instead, if you leave the price at $100,000 and you get the seller to, in one way or another, credit you or put repair funds in escrow or give you credit for property taxes or something, you can still make the purchase price $100,000, which means you're getting the loan for $80,000. So you're putting up $20,000 instead of $18,000, but you don't have to put up the other $10,000 for repairs because it's going to come from the seller. Seller's getting the full $100,000 and he's giving you $10,000 back. Okay, so it allows you to basically get the same thing done, but with less capital. So in this particular example, it allows you to do it with $20,000 instead of $28,000, which was the whole thing with LuPay's deal. That when I brought it up to her, I was like, I don't think you want to get a price reduction on this, because she was using a conventional lender, explained why, and that is what created the situation where they went and looked for another way to do it. Okay, so let me show you just, but if it was, where straight price reduction works is if you're getting, where it's not really going to matter anyway. Like you're getting a hard money loan, you're getting some kind of temporary loan, or you're buying the property with cash, then frankly, it doesn't matter. There's no strategy of trying to get your loan amount higher, right? So this is an example. So right, when you get your property under contract and then you're going back to renegotiate, there has to be an addendum, and the addendum is basically going to list any changes. So in this particular case, it was in lieu of, so I'm down in section G, in lieu of the seller making any repairs to the property, purchase price will be adjusted to $123,500. All right, so that is what it would look like, the paperwork. Now, when you close, then it just shows that that's the sale price. Okay, so there's nothing really complicated about it. It's just you have a price reduction, now you're paying a lower price. And that's kind of how it looked basically on Battelle's deal. It was just a reduction in price, same with Steve's. All right, now this is an example of if there's a situation where you're going to get a credit at closing. I just wanted to show you what it looks like. This was actually a property where we were on the other side of it. We were actually selling the property, and there was something that the buyer wanted, and we were like, well, and originally we had it under contract for like 176 or 177, and they're like, well, what if we just bump up the price, because they were getting a 97% FHA loan. So what if we bump up the price, but you give us a $4,000 credit back, and then we can go get the stuff done, and that way we can effectively, finance it instead of coming out of pocket. And we said, okay, that's fine. So that's how it shows up. It shows the sale price is 180, and then there's a debit on the seller side. So we are the seller in this case. So there's a debit to our account for 4,000, and that gets credited to the borrower, that same 4,000. Okay, so that's what it looks like when the seller's just giving you a straight credit. You get the money at closing, or really what it does, it just reduces the amount of capital you have to bring to the closing. All right, and then the third example that I was going to show you, this is on LuPay's deal. This is where the repairs were actually deducted from the seller's proceeds and held in escrow. So it didn't actually show up on the buyer's side. So the lender's not paying any attention to the seller side of it because it has nothing to do with them. So it's a strategy to help get through a repair that might make the lender go, whoa, 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 we don't want to fund a property that has a bad roof, even though she's, fixing it immediately. All right, so right there you see circled the purchase price of the property is $120,000, and then on the next page, down where it says additional settlement charges, she blocked it out, but it was like payment to, and it was the roofing company, so it was $67.60. So if you look at, so on the left, you can see on the left side of the page, it's the seller. So down there, it's being debited from the seller's account, but it's not being credited to LuPay. So the bank isn't seeing that it's showing up that she's getting a credit for it, but it is coming out of the seller's account. It's being held by the title company in escrow, basically, until the roof is done, at which time they would release the funds and send it to the roofer. And then there was something with the basement that needed to be done also. That's what the $1,550 was. So that was a creative way for LuPay to get what she needed. But, for her to just take what it ended up being, an $8,200 price reduction, it wouldn't have really served her that well, because she's still going to have to come up with 80% of the lower price, and then she's going to have to come up with all of the $8,200 in repairs, right? So this is how she got around doing that, and the loan was still able to go through. And when I advised her, call and check with your banker and see what he says, tell him the inspection's coming up, that's exactly what she did. And he was like, if something comes up, I would just maybe tell them to give you a credit for closing costs. So he was kind of like, please don't tell me. that was effectively what he was saying. So anyway, those are a couple of examples. I hope that helps. I want to talk a little bit again from strategy. So Temi, this is, when we did our apartment webinar in January, we were waiting for Temi to close. So I didn't have a picture of him having closed yet. So I wanted to include this because he is now under contract with another 6-unit that he did go through price reduction negotiations on. But anyway, this is Temi's first 6-unit building, and it's stabilized. There's renters in there. He's got rents coming in, property management set up. It's already cash flowing. And that was just a picture he took. He's just being funny that he sent on the string, and he's like checking in on my bank account after wiring the down payment. He's like, and at the very bottom, he's like, okay, closing's done. Now I'm off to take a nap. I am not to be disturbed for the next 2 to 48 hours. Right? He was exhausted. Closing an apartment building or any property, especially your first one, it is exhausting because there's all sorts of things that you have to overcome. So he's like, okay, now I'm ready to rest. So step 1, buy building. Step 2, take break, have fun. And it looks like he has all that taken care of, right? So he's having fun, taking a break. Then he's like, okay, that's enough. It's time to buy another building. All right, repeat. So there he is on the phone negotiating, and this is property number 2 that he now has under contract. So this is the one that it was listed for $325. Through the initial negotiating back and forth, got it down to $280, and that didn't happen right away. It took a little while to get there. And then after the inspection was done, he went back, renegotiated the price again. And it's funny because when he was talking to the agent, he was absolutely willing to walk away from the deal, because the agent's like, there's no way, we already came down 45,000, so we're not coming down any further. And he's like, okay, well, I appreciate your time. And he said, if something changes, you can let me know. And he was willing to let it go. And he's just like, that's it. But truly, the numbers didn't work at the 280. But he's like, I'm not going to force the deal to work. I can't pay that much. There's all these things wrong with it. And so because he just walked away, I think it was like a few hours later, the seller's broker called him back and was like, all right, let's talk about it. So I think Temi went back to him and said, I need it at 230. And then the seller's broker came back and said, we'll do 240. But that's it. We're done. There's no more negotiations, etc. And if we agree to this, your earnest money deposit is going non-refundable, and we're done with the due diligence period. So Temi had to go back and forth a little bit, and basically they solidified the deal, and now he's just waiting to close. So it's interesting because the thing that he had to make a decision about at that point is, what is the best strategy? Is it better for him to get a $40,000 credit at closing, or is it better for him to get the price reduction? And what it really comes down to in this particular case is it comes down to the financing. So this building needs about $90,000 of work. So, and there's only 3 units in there that are occupied and 3 are vacant. So in a situation like that, you're very unlikely to get a loan from a conventional bank, because conventional banks don't lend on and don't like what they consider to be risky assets. And that would be a risky asset when there's only half the income coming in. It needs some pretty major repairs. So he's not going to be able to get regular financing. He's going the route of hard money. So there's no real benefit for him to having cash back at closing to pay for the repairs, because the hard money lender is lending 100% of the repairs. Okay, so that's what, but if he went back and he was like, no, I am doing it through a regular bank, then he might go back and negotiate something different with the seller in order to maximize the capital he had available to be able to move forward and do the deal. All right. This just seems so random. Okay, I know probably all of you are already in our multifamily real estate investing Facebook group, but just in case, if there is anybody here who came from the email that we had sent out, and this is your first time with us and you're not in our Facebook group, that is what it's called, Multifamily Real Estate Investing, and that's what the banner looks like. I highly recommend that you go and join us. We have about 10,000, 10,500 or so members in our group. We just do a lot of free education and answering questions and really helping people get their whole real estate careers either started or get them scaling from what they're already doing, small 1 to 4 families, into apartments. So that's our Facebook group. We'd love to see you there. And there's no charge. It's a free Facebook group. All right. So I want to show you a little bit about, like, what does momentum look like? All right. So this is Kahisha. She was in our program, and one of the things that she had said was, look, being a part of the program has helped me move out of my comfort zone. Jen and Stacy hold me accountable, which I've needed for years. And she is not kidding. Like, we hold people's feet to the fire. The other night, if any of you were on the mindset call, then you saw it. Karen was like, oh, I'm terrified of calling contractors, but she had 2 properties under contract. And so I was like, no, you have to call contractors. So Jen's like, no, you have to call 5 contractors by tomorrow. And I was like, let's make it 10. And I was like, and let's do bonus. If you call 12, then you even get bonus points. I don't know what you use the bonus points for, but we really do push our members because, you know, sometimes you just won't do the scary thing because you just get in your own way. So anyway, so Kahisha is right. We will hold you accountable and push you so that you can do the thing that you really want to do. Sometimes you just need a coach to hold your hand and, you know, go with you across that finish line. Marlene, I like the weekly calls we have together as a group, and we work together as a team to analyze situations, and I recommend anyone to join this program. So Marlene is one of the people who was doing the joint venture with Steve and Lupe and Brad and Felicia and Debbie. So yeah, talk about a team approach. And then Brad, who's the other side of Brad and Marlene, he said, the best part of this group is the camaraderie and the support from multiple coaches and my peer investors. My possibilities are endless now. Natasha, who many of you might know, she did her first 6 duplexes within the first 90 days in the program. She ended up doing this huge wholesale deal. It was awesome. Bobby, who was in the very early part of our program when we just started it, and he within four months acquired an out-of-state portfolio that was 12 units. So in 4 months, he went from 0 to 12 units. They were a value add, so he had cash flow coming in, tons of upside. So that was exciting. Battelle, who you got to hear from, she acquired her first out-of-state single-family home. She'd never done remote investing before. And then she went on to acquire Hotel Battelle, her first multifamily 9-unit building that she's doing as Airbnb. Temi, so now you know, he's now closed on his first 6-unit apartment building. He just did that a couple weeks ago. And now he's under contract on his next 6-unit, which is going to be a value add project where he's going to be able to really increase the value of the property. Joni closed on her first 6-unit apartment building, which is a value add project. And then a month later closed on a 9-unit stabilized apartment building. So yeah, like talk about momentum, like our mastermind members they're just killing it. Steve, he went from 0 to 21 units in just over 90 days. I don't think I've seen anybody ever move quite that fast. And it'd be one thing if it was a 21 unit apartment building, but it wasn't. It was like 10 duplexes in a single family home. Like he just went on a buying spree. And it's like, once you do that first one, it just gets easy. And then now he's closed on an 18 unit with some partners in the mastermind, and he is negotiating today, and looks like he is any moment from getting under contract another 10 unit performing stabilized triple net apartment building. Super rare, practically unheard of. But anyway, so he's hopefully going to be closing on another 10 units here in the next 60 days. Anyway, so these are just some of our mastermind members, people who are, working with us or having us hold their hand as they go kind of across the finish line and going through their journey and helping. It's not that you can't figure out how to do the deal. Everybody can figure it out. If you're willing enough, you can eventually piece all the things together. The question is, how quickly do you want to do it? And how many mistakes do you want to make or avoid making along the way? I could tell you, like, when Jen and I started investing, we were not investing together. We weren't together at the time. So we both had our own journey, and we could each tell you stories of 6-figure losses that we took on some things in the beginning, because even though we knew we had education, we didn't exactly know. We didn't have a coach or mentor looking at our deals. We made a lot of mistakes. And that's why we're really passionate about helping you guys avoid them. So anyway, so you really have a choice to make when you're moving forward. First choice is, of course, go ahead and you can try to figure it out on your own. And I believe you absolutely could. The question is, how well are you going to do? Or how hard are you going to crash on that journey of doing it? And we've been there, and it sucks. It's awful. And we want to be here for you to help you along your journey so that you could do it right the first time. So you get confidence and have a repeatable process. The reason you see Steve closing so many deals, the reason you see Lupe closing deal after deal after deal, and the reason you see Joni with 2 apartment buildings and now getting ready to have a 3rd one under contract, the reason you have Temi closing on a building, have another one under contract, is because everything we do is all about systems. It is a systematic, repeatable process. And if you follow it, you mitigate 99% of the risk and the problems that new investors face when they don't have a systemized approach to, taking on these investment projects. All right. Your second choice, your better choice, of course, in my opinion, is to learn our proven and tested process. So, from Jen and I, who we've mastered real estate. I'm not saying we don't have anything to learn. You always have stuff to learn. But the reality is, for what you're doing, we've been doing it for years. We can see a mile ahead the red flags that you don't even realize exist yet, right? So that's part of our mission, is to educate you about those and take you across the finish line in such a way that keeps you safe, and that you're making the most money you can on your deals, and that you could just do it over and over and over.
The winner's path is joining the mastermind and getting started building your portfolio with us holding your hand. Over the next few days, we've set aside some time to talk with you and see if we can help. We'll talk for about 45 minutes, and we'll map out an exact action plan for you to follow so that you can get started building your portfolio. If that's something you want to have a chat with us about, you're going to text the word freedom to the number on the screen, which is 619-373-8461. And when you text the word freedom, that's our business text line, we will automatically shoot you back an application for our mastermind program that will ask some questions just to get an idea of what your goals are, where you're at, and we'll identify if we can help you. And if so, we'll schedule a call for you. So when we get on a call together, we're going to dive into your goals, your current resources, and identify the actions you need to take in order to get your portfolio going in less than 90 days. So why are we doing this? If you want us to personally work with you to launch your real estate portfolio, and if we think it's a good fit, we might invite you to become one of the new students that we take on. If that's the case, we'll walk you through what it would look like and take you through an overview of our program that's designed to get you into your first remote property in as little as 90 days. You're going to text the word freedom to 619-373-8461.
All right. So question from Jay was, where can I rewatch this? That's a great question. So Jay, a couple of options on our Facebook group, because we have been streaming this live into our Facebook group. Facebook automatically saves it. So you can go into the Facebook group and watch it there. Usually within a few days or so after we do one of these, we have our team go and take it and get it ready and put it on YouTube. So we'll probably also have it on YouTube by next week. But if you're looking to rewatch it sooner than that, you could just do that on the Facebook group. I see Nick Jack. Is this for USA or Canada? Well, Nick, we primarily we're focused in the U.S., but a lot of the strategies that we're talking about, it's not location specific. So you can live in Canada and invest in the U.S., and this would work. And I imagine just from knowing negotiations and how to communicate it, it probably isn't a whole lot different in Canada. If you're buying a property in Canada, you want to double check with your realtor, your agent, so that you're doing things in line with how it's done there. But at least as an initial way to communicate, hey, this is what's wrong with the property. You're fine to use this format. Okay, so is there a certain amount of money you need to be able to start investing in multifamily? Kristen, no. It really is a bigger conversation. It takes money to invest in real estate without a doubt. But you don't have to be the one to have the money. Now, you probably have, I'm guessing from the way you asked the question, like maybe you have some money, but you're not sure whether it's enough. So it really is going to depend on what your goals are and how much capital you have. If you're trying to get right into apartments and you've got, 6 figures available, then cool, you could probably jump right into apartments without needing to have a partner. Now, you're not going to be able to get into a huge apartment building with that, but you could get started. Most people, when they start with real estate investing, if they're starting with a level of investment that is outside of their own personal ability to close, will partner up. That's part of why, like, Steve got into that 18 unit. He wouldn't have been able to get into that 18 unit by himself because he didn't have $500,000 just sitting around that he could just put into the deal. So he's like, got some friends, they all put some money in, and they're all doing the deal together. So that's a very common way to do real estate when you're new. And personally, for me, when I was a new investor, I didn't have any funds, but I had a ton of passion and a ton of enthusiasm and completely willing to do all of the work and do what it took. So I would end up networking and talking to other people who were like also excited about real estate investing, but they didn't know how to do it. And I didn't exactly know how to do it either, but I had some training. It was terrible training, but I had some training. So I was willing to be the one to do it. So I would end up partnering up with people. So I would pretty much handle all the stuff. They would be my money partner. They'd always have to have some kind of other role because it's a joint venture. You can't have them be a totally passive investor without it being considered a security. But anyway, another conversation for a whole nother class. Anyway, but we would end up partnering up together, and it was a win-win, right? Because for me, I wouldn't have been able to get into the deal because I didn't have the money. So without them, I couldn't have gotten to the deal. And for them, they had the money, but they didn't have the knowledge or the time or the willingness to learn and go make it happen. And I did. So together, we were both able to cross that bridge from we haven't done a deal to now we have done a deal. And when I did that a handful of times, eventually I didn't need to have partners anymore. But then you go and you level up to the next level. And of course, you're going to end up bringing in partners or private money, like from people that you know, in order to do the deal. So, Kristen, there's no dollar amount of money that you need, though. If you want to jump off of visual mute, I don't know what it's called, turn your video on, I can ask you a couple of questions and maybe give you some guidance if you want to do that.
Okay, so, all right, is it letting me talk?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, well, it won't let me do the video either. It says unable to start video. You can't start your video because the host has stopped it. So.
Oh, that's why nobody has their video on. There's always such a learning curve with everything that we do, I swear. Okay, well, Jen's going to try to figure that out in the meantime. But okay, well, go ahead and give me an idea of kind of where you're at, Kristen, so I can hopefully give you more specific advice.
Yeah, I'm really just kind of starting out.
Okay.
Ideally, I want to be in multifamily. That's what I want to do. But I almost feel like I have to start in single family in order to build up to be able to do multifamily. And people I've talked to, they're like, oh yeah, you need, at least $70,000, $100,000 to do multifamily. But then I've also like been networking and trying to meet people and do stuff. And I've found people that are like private money lenders. And I'm like, okay, well, do I really need money? And how much money do I really need? And so I'm figuring things out, but it's going to take me a while because I'm new to it all.
Yeah. So you, do you mind if I ask how much capital you're comfortable putting into a deal?
Just me personally,
You personally.
yep, about 50,000, and that's about
Oh,
it.
yeah, you've got plenty of money to get started. Okay, so here are your options as I see them.
Okay.
First of all, you absolutely can get started in multifamily immediately. You do not have to start with single family, and if your goal is to create cash flow, single families aren't great for that, right? They're really good for holding, value and even going up in value over time if you happen to be in an area that's changing value, but they're not great for cash flow because the moment you have someone move out and you have 1 month of vacancy, all of your cash flow for the year is gone, right? It's toast.
Right.
So multifamily from that standpoint is anything that's 2 or more units. So you could easily get started in 2 to 4 family with $50,000. With apartments, even to some degree, well, it would have to be maybe a small apartment building, but even apartments you might be able to get into with 50,000 if it was like you're starting with a small one. But at a minimum, you could for sure get into 2 to 4 family. If you're having $50,000, you could do one of 2 things in the 2 to 4 unit arena. You can either go for something that's already stabilized or it's already rented, it's already performing, and you're putting a down payment and your rents are coming in. So you'd have to find a market where you're probably going to need to be purchase price less than 200,000.
Mm-hmm.
Is my guess based on $50,000 available. $200,000 or lower. There's lots of markets where you can get duplexes for a lot less than that. And then you'd have plenty of down payment to be able to do it. But then you're just parking your money and you're getting the cash flow. And the money is just going to stay parked there until you sell it or refinance the property at some point in the future if the value went up. The other option for you, and the one that it's kind of our favorite strategy for when people are getting started, is doing the BRRRR strategy. But it's not a good fit for everyone because not everybody wants to renovate and wants to go through those headaches, because they're definitely headaches, but they're good paying headaches. So the BRRRR strategy is where you're going to, buy the fixer upper, renovate it, rent it out, and then refinance it. So the BRRRR strategy will tend to take less capital overall, because let's say you're buying a property for $100,000 as a fixer and you're putting $50,000 of capital into it. Hard money lenders, who would probably be the primary lending type for that type of deal, even if you're brand new, you can get up to 80% of the purchase price and 100% of the rehab. So in that case, all you're doing is bringing $20,000 as the down payment. Plus you're going to have, the lender fees and closing costs. So you have some other fees involved, but the amount of capital is smaller. And the idea is you're increasing the value of the property through the renovations you're doing. And then now it has a higher value. And then after 6 months, you refinance the property based on the new value, and you're doing a cash out refi. So you're pulling your money that you put into it, that 20 plus thousand, you're pulling it back out, or some of it back out, and then you're doing it again. So on those types of deals, you could probably do 2 of those with 50,000, or I don't know, maybe 2 might be a little bit. It just depends on what the price points are of those, but you can make your money go a little bit farther if you're willing to do it. And if you're doing the BRRRR strategy, you're really walking into both cash flow and equity when you do it correctly. So
That's kind of what I was hoping to be able to do, is something along those lines. I'm in DFW, and so the market here is like super crazy and competitive.
Yeah.
And so then one of the things I was looking at is how you say, oh, we'll just do it in other markets. But I've also been told, when you're starting out, don't be doing things in other markets where you're not close by and you can't monitor stuff. And I'm like, okay, I kind of get that. So
yeah. It seems very logical. It seems like a very logical statement. And if I did not know otherwise, I'd be like, yeah, that does make sense. I'll just tell you from experience, it's just not the truth. That is from a place from someone who's just like, either they don't know how to invest remotely or they didn't have their systems in place. But the challenge of trying to fit, a square peg into a round hole, which is, a good priced property in a very competitive market, is sometimes you'll never actually get started. And the reality is sometimes people make the mistake of thinking that because they're local, okay, you can keep an eye on the deal because you're local. But what are you really keeping an eye on? And what exactly are you seeing? How are your eyes trained? Are you a licensed general contractor? Are you a home inspector? And I know for most people, they would answer, well, no. Yeah, and neither am I. So even if I had the house next door, I'm still going to do things the exact way we teach it for remote. So if you start to realize that, there's always going to be people who are way more qualified than you are in their respective fields. The realtor when it comes to selling a property, the property manager when it comes to renting a property, the general contractor when it comes to fixing a property, and the home inspector when it comes to inspecting a property and making sure it's right. You're hiring like the experts that are right there in that market. So you have the ability to keep your eyes on the property all the time, even better eyes than your own.
Yeah.
So it's a really big mindset shift. And I know it's difficult in the beginning for people to wrap their mind around it. But once you do, like, you're limitless. You can invest anywhere that financially it makes sense, because you're no longer restricted mentally or in any way to any one particular market where you're hoping that eventually it turns to a buyer's market so you can get a good deal. And in the meantime, you could have had 10 properties if you learn the system. But
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. And we have, Kristen, I don't know if you've already seen it, but we have the remote investing masterclass. So I think based on what you told me, that masterclass and also the BRRRR strategy, the BRRRR masterclass, those will probably be two good ones for you to consume and really just start laying that deeper foundation so that you can start making some decisions about what you want to do with your investing. And I just realized I didn't have a slide for the code words. I will tell all of you, if you're in our Facebook group, if you just message our admin, Michael, I say admin, his talent level is so far beyond that. But anyway, if you message Michael, he will send you the link to whichever class makes sense for what you guys are trying to accomplish. So he's posting a lot in our group, so you should be able to find him, but his Facebook name is Michael Wow Admin. So anyway, find him. He could send you the links for any of those classes so that you can get more educated and start to build your confidence so that you can stop waiting and actually get started, Kristen. And then if you decided, you know what, I really want to start in apartments, cool. You could use your 50,000 and partner up with someone else who's also bringing some money and partner up in the deal. So you really don't have any limitations at this point. You've got plenty of capital to start on your own in 2 to 4 family, and you've got definitely enough capital to get started with apartments also. It's just you're going to bring in a partner to bridge the gap of what you don't have.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Okay, subhash. In the landlord-friendly states, would it generally be easier to evict a non-paying tenant, especially considering the existing eviction moratorium in place? In landlord-friendly states, it would be generally easier. In landlord-friendly states, subhash, I know I think you're in Australia. We're in such an unusual time frame that generally I would say yes, but frankly what it comes down to is the local areas. It's not so much are they landlord friendly or tenant friendly, although I'm sure that does play some part. It's, are they open? Like one of our markets is Indianapolis, and they just opened the courts. I have been waiting for 11 and a half months to go to court to sue these tenants for damage they did to my property, and the COVID hit right when we were about to go to court. So I've been able to go to court for all this time. So, I mean, not me, but my property manager. So courts just opened up there, but you have to look at wherever you're looking to invest. You want to find out what's the current state of things. No matter what, I would be hard pressed to ever give you the go ahead to buy something that has a tenant that is not paying, because the level of risk that comes with doing that is so high, because you can't, like, everything that Jen and I do, like, we will take risks, but we always know going in what's the upside. We also know the downside, and we know what the likelihood is of any risk that we're taking. And we're like, okay, this is the risk. We don't think it's going to happen, but we acknowledge that this is what we're looking at. When you're dealing with tenants that aren't paying right now in COVID, and really at any time, you don't know, because if you close and they're still living there, how long are you going to have no rent coming in? And how much damage are they going to do while they live there and on their way out, because they're angry that you basically kicked them out, right? Instead of just giving them free rent, because of course they should get free rent. Anyway, so I just wouldn't consider buying anything that has a tenant or tenants in there that aren't paying, because you can't predict what your real numbers will be. It's impossible to. So to me, that just makes it too risky, and I would just pass. There's no deal that's that good, because you could be off by $20,000 pretty easily in a situation like that. Malcolm. Oh, Malcolm said, Stacy, you were so detailed that there just may not be any questions. You rock. Thanks, Malcolm. It's nice to see you here. Okay, are these, I actually can't see. Oh, Jeannie. Okay. Are these mostly MLS, LoopNet, et cetera, properties, or trying to locate only off market? Jeannie, we do both. So if you attend any of our other trainings or do any of our 5-day challenges or anything like that, what you're going to see is a common theme. Because we teach people how to do it remotely, we primarily find our deals through realtors. Now, that doesn't mean that all the properties that we're buying are on the MLS, but some of them are. When people say there's no good deals on the MLS, I'm sorry, that is just frankly not true. It's maybe in certain markets there's not that kind of deal, but it's way too big of a blanket statement, and it's just not the truth that there's no good deals on the MLS. But that being said, the bigger benefit, what you're looking for, is the relationship with the realtors, because usually there's going to be like one kind of investor specialist in any given office, right? You don't usually have real estate offices that have a whole bunch of investor friendly realtors. Most realtors are servicing homeowners. So there's usually going to be one person who's kind of like the investor go-to. So anytime they have a client who has a deal before it goes on the market, or anytime anybody else in that office has a fixer-upper or a duplex or an apartment building, they're always going to go to that agent who's like the investor agent and be like, hey, would any of your clients be interested in this, right? So what you're looking to do with the agents is build relationships so that regardless of whether the property came on MLS or whether it came as a pocket listing or from someone else in their office, you want to be the one they think of. So it's both on MLS and off MLS. Now I'll tell you the two, let's see, the Lupe, the first, second, third, and fourth deal. Well, it's like first, second, third. Actually, I don't know about the fourth. First, second, and third deal for sure all came from MLS. For Steve, about half of them came from MLS and half of them came from off-market listings. With the apartment buildings, with Battelle, it came from a real estate broker for a property that wasn't listed. And with Steve, same thing, that 18 unit, it wasn't listed yet, but it came through a broker who he had developed a relationship with. So our students are really doing both. They're doing both. So I recommend you go for the relationship with the realtor, and regardless of whether where the deal comes from, it doesn't really matter, right? As long as the numbers work for you. Marietta, when you negotiate, are you negotiating directly or through a realtor? So usually, Marietta, you're going to be negotiating through a realtor. It depends a little bit. Like I know you just came in yesterday. Welcome to the mastermind, by the way. You're now in our Apartment Gladiator mastermind. So one of the things you're going to see as you get started in buying apartments is that sometimes you're actually dealing with the seller's agent. And that's very, very customary. It's not so customary when it comes to residential. You'll usually have your own buyer's agent. And so you're always communicating to your buyer's agent. Buyer's agent's communicating to the listing agent. Listing agent is communicating to the seller. That's typical 1 to 4 family. In apartments, the reason is that the person who's listing it, oftentimes they want to double end it. And it's just considered okay to do that in that world. So they're going to want to find the buyer themselves so they don't have to split that commission. So if that's the case, you might be dealing with your agent, but your agent isn't really your agent. It's the seller's agent. And if you need to have representation, you're going to basically need to convince them to allow you to bring your own agent in. But it's somewhat unlikely then that you'll get the deal because the realtor is not going to want to split it. So you might have to be willing to pay more or pay the realtor yourself or something along those lines. But anyway, so you're not usually dealing directly with the seller though. Occasionally, it's always our goal, it's always our desire to be able to talk directly with the seller, but it doesn't happen that often that the agents are comfortable enough just putting the buyer and the seller together. I don't know if they think like we're going to go around them. We really can't because there's agreements in place, but you're not usually talking to the seller directly unless you're completely going off market, doing letter campaigns or door knocking or any of those things that I still teach it in the apartment course. You'll see it, but I don't focus on it because it's not friendly for time, money, or doing it remotely. All right. From Sabash, what are the key determining characteristics of a B and C class neighborhoods? Would B generally fare better than C? Okay, so like so understanding the class of neighborhoods, and this is usually referring to apartments, but class A neighborhoods would be, it's like downtown San Diego, super trendy, high-end, beautiful apartments, super, super pricey, every amenity you can imagine. That's class A. They don't cash flow worth anything because they're so expensive. But when people have a lot of capital, they have to put somewhere, or maybe like a big fund, that's usually who's investing in class A apartment buildings. Class B is going to be, might consider it like white collar. Class C, blue collar, if you're going to associate it to like a working class. So class B is always going to be a nicer property, newer property, nicer property, more amenities than class C. Class C is more like blue collar. We have the basics, it's in decent condition. Neighborhood it's okay, that's class C. Class D is like, I'm a little bit nervous about driving through there at night. That's class D, where you have a lot of turnover. You might have drugs, prostitution, all the things that you don't want to have in a building. Violence, a lot of police calls and stuff. That would be class D. They cash flow like a monster on paper, but not really in real life because of the amount of expense and the turnover that you're dealing with. Okay, thank you. Oh, I see there. Okay. This is tricky. These questions are all just coming together without any spaces. Okay, would the home inspector is expected at the absolute minimum to go through structural, external, roofing, HVAC, plumbing, attic, electrical aspects of a fourplex? How much would it generally cost for a fourplex inspection? The scope of work for what the inspector is going to do is going to depend largely on what you're asking for. So generally in a full home inspection, they're literally going like soup to nuts. They're checking from the roof all the way down to the crawl space, the basement, the electrical, the plumbing. They're checking everything. As far as a fourplex, it's going to be more expensive because there's all these different units. How much? You're probably looking at 800-ish, maybe up to 1,000. When you get into a market and you start using the same inspector over and over and over, you can probably get some kind of discount because of the volume. But generally I plan on 800 to 1,000. And in a case like that, if it's a fourplex, they might say, well, are you looking for like complete full inspection, or are you just looking for the major mechanicals, and your roof and basement kind of thing? And there will probably be a different price depending on what you need because it's a different level of inspection. What insurance would be mandatory as a fourplex investor other than building public liability? There's no specific insurance other than just a landlord policy. The insurance requirement is going to be largely driven by the lender. The lender is usually the one saying, we want to have replacement cost and we want to have loss of rents included in that. So your lender is really going to be the one driving the requirements of insurance. It's more like if you want anything above and beyond that, then you can certainly do that. But your insurance agent's going to be or your lender's going to be the one that really drives that. But you're basically getting a landlord policy where the building is covered if anything happens to it. And ideally, you should, in my opinion, also have loss of rents so that if something happened and your tenants had to move out during that time, you don't have income, that you still get the rental income coming in because of course you still have a mortgage. What would be the best way to vet the title company, make sure the financial stability of an underwriter? Best way to vet a title company is use a title company that's been well established for a long time and has a solid reputation in the market. So I always recommend just reaching out to your realtor and asking who have they worked with, how long have they worked with them, and then just doing some research and making sure there's no complaints that you find about that title company. With the bedroom choice, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom units within a fourplex is more market dependent, especially noting the 1-bedroom tenants will be transient in nature. Okay, I'm not really sure what your question is, but I'll make a general statement that I think will probably answer it. Generally speaking, anytime you have the opportunity to get something that's 3-bedroom, that's going to be better than 2-bedroom. 2-bedroom is going to be better than 1-bedroom. 1-bedroom is going to be better than studio. Now, that being said, there's certain markets where 1-bedrooms, that's just what everything is. So if that's the case, then you kind of just throw this out and you ignore it because 1-bedroom is what's common, then that's what you're buying. But in most markets, what you're going to find is that the difference between a 1-bedroom and a 2-bedroom and a 3-bedroom is that the more bedrooms there are, it's usually the larger the family is that is moving in. And not that this is not like a science, it's just the way it seems to pan out is when people have more people and more stuff that they move in, it's not so easy for them to just pick up and move again. It's like a huge pain. The thought of moving makes me want to curl up in a ball and start crying because we got 4 kids and like all the stuff. I'm like, I don't want to move. That's terrible, right? But if I'm just a single person, or it's just, we're just a couple, we don't have a lot going on, we can live in a 1-bedroom, it's not that hard to just up and move. So that's really where it comes from as far as like 1-bedroom versus 2 to 3 bedroom is the 2 to 3 bedrooms tend to have less turnover. In my opinion, it's because the tenants, it's much harder for the tenants to actually move. It takes more effort. So if you have the option, 2 and 3 bedrooms, usually going to be a better fit for you than a 1-bedroom because you're going to have less turnover as a general statement. All right, Megan, since the market is so competitive right now, does it make sense to make a competitive offer and then negotiate down after acceptance? Yes. Or make the initial offer based on your cash flow goals? Well, okay. Which will be lower than asking. It really depends, Megan. So what I suggest is you run your numbers and you come up with, this is the offer that I can make where the numbers work for me, right? If you go to make that offer and you're like, well, I'm actually not that far off from what the seller's asking, then I don't really have a problem with just upping my offer to meet them and then go get into due diligence and then negotiate it back down. But if I'm really far off, frankly, I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste their time. So if I'm $20,000, $30,000 off, I'm not just going to go and give them their offer price because I know the chance of them coming down that much is fairly minimal. So if it's kind of a big difference, I'm just going to say, this is what I could do. It's the best I could do. But if I'm pretty close, I might just pop my offer back up to what they're asking just to lock it up. And then I can go back and renegotiate it once I really have all of the information. And at that point, you might not even need to renegotiate it. But if you do, then, at least you have it under contract as opposed to someone who just went in making the lower offer but you got it locked up. Sherry, do you find that the people you hire at a distance don't perform at a high level because they know you're not around and aren't going to show up or confront them personally if they aren't on the job or performing? No, part of it, Sherry, is we have an interview and a screening process that is extraordinarily thorough. So in order for someone to even have a chance to get on our team, they kind of have to be the rock star in their area. So like if we're like, meh, or their references don't come back good, we're not hiring them. So do we find that they don't perform at a high level because we're not there? No, because here's the other thing. I might not be there, but my home inspector's there. I might not be there, but my property manager's there. So my teammates they're my team, right? They're not each other's team. If I need my realtor to go put eyes on the property during the rehab just to have eyes there, that's not something we typically need to do. I can do that. It might as well be me. It doesn't make any difference. So just so you know, no. Go ahead.
You could hear me. All right. Sherry, what I wanted to tell you is that we have our system is in place so even though we're not there, we're still getting frequent check-ins. So we use different types of technology and applications like Marco Polo, where we check in with the contractor and they're showing us. So we could see whether or not they're actually performing visually. And then on top of that, when it comes time and it's time to pay, we get our inspector to go in there and verify and validate and make sure that it's not just a staged opportunity. But yeah, no, we vet really hard. We hire slow, fire quick. And then we have systems in place to monitor performance. And then we do intervene. We've never had to step foot in any of our properties though, because people weren't managing the performance. We've actually never even stepped foot in any of our properties at all, but we definitely wouldn't fly there because we have everything already set up. So I don't know if that helps or not, but I did want to give you some context. It's not like we're just hiring them and staying here with blinders on while we're working. We have a system in place so that we have constant updates and what our milestones are. We need to know if we're hitting those or not. So we have things in place and they agree to keeping us informed. And then it's a relationship business. So we constantly stay engaged with them and making sure, hey, what are we stubbing our toe on this week? And when are we going to get back in line? And then constantly communicating to get back in line on that. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, we did right before we did the Burr challenge last month, the 5-day challenge, we did a masterclass that was called Managing Contractors. And in that masterclass, we actually went into a lot of detail about how we manage that part of our team and that process to make sure that we're not sending money that just ends up disappearing, right? There's all sorts of that. So we actually did a masterclass on that, which you could get from Michael if you want to learn more about that. All right, Laura, I have money to invest, but more than that, my friends have lots. Oh, okay, gotcha. So you got rich friends. Okay. My credit score is 720, but because I have a work permit and not permanent residence yet, banks do not lend at a good rate. So what can I do? All right. So in that case, Laura, what you can do is you can partner up with your friends that have funds. I'm assuming that your friends who have funds are citizens or could get financing. So if that's not the case, then I apologize, but I'm going to make that leap. So you would just partner up with them. So not only are they putting the money up, they're also putting their credit up, and that's basically how you get started. It's where a lot of people who aren't they're either investing in the U.S. from outside the U.S. Like Karen's on the call and she's in our mastermind. If she wants to buy a property here for right now, she has to partner up because of the inability to get a loan on your own. Most lenders won't do that. So yeah, I just say partner up, but I'd also say do some sorry, my throat just went. I'd also do some calling around to hard money lenders, because some hard money lenders will lend even if you're not a citizen. I don't know which ones. I used to have one, which was IMC money, and something must have changed where they're not able to anymore. But in the past, I knew that there were several. It's just that the down payment was higher. So that might be a solution, and or just partnering up with your friends and having them use their credit also.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. Chris, what returns are realistic for 4 to 8 unit or BRRRR in Indianapolis or similar Midwest market? What returns are realistic for stable 4 to 8 unit in the same market? Chris, that's a really difficult question to give like a straight answer on. I will tell you that in general, when we're doing the BRRRR strategy, it's very unusual that our cash on cash return is anything less than like 30 to 40%. It's usually pretty high. And the reason is that, first of all, we do our renovations nice, not high end, but nice. So we maximize the rental income that comes in, which maximizes the net operating income. And then when we refinance, we want to try to pull out as much capital as we can, which we're always usually leaving some capital in, but we're trying to minimize that amount. So when you compare, we have the highest possible rents in with not very much money left in there because we did the renovation and the refinance. We have new higher value. Our cash on cash return is usually very, very high. And I don't want to say like, oh, everybody should expect that. That's typical. But I feel like you probably should expect it and it's typical. But you have to run the numbers and see where they come in. But you should definitely be having a much higher return on investment if you're running your numbers correctly, doing the BRRRR strategy. On a stabilized purchase, depending on the market, how hot it is, you're probably going to be somewhere between 8 to 10% for a return on investment, cash on cash return, if you're just buying it stabilized. So that's part of the reason we like to do the BRRRR strategy, because we like to have the high cash on cash return. We like being able to improve properties. We like adding the equity, et cetera. But getting 8% is like, that's great right now. Like that's a great return if you just want to buy something that you don't have to do any work. When you're renovating, it's no joke. You're going to want to punch yourself in the face 45 times for doing the project. And then at the end, you're like, oh, that was so great. I got to do another one. You forget all the pain you had. But, just like that's how kids get born, second children get born. It's how second rehabs get done also, and third and fourth, because you make so much more money that afterwards you're like, wow, it's so pretty. And I have such great equity and I have great cash flow. It wasn't that bad. And then you get into your second one, you're like, oh, why did I do this to myself? Right. But that's just it. What do you want? You want to make a lot of money? It's not going to be, it's not going to be no work. It's going to be something. And usually it's just a pain in your butt dealing with the contractor, but it's just the name of the game. Okay. Question from Susan watching live on Facebook. Is the BRRRR strategy hard to initiate out of state? I live in Maryland and property values are outrageous. Agreed. We cannot take any more questions at this time. Oh, I just realized that's what Jenna. Okay. So Susan, actually, Lupe, who I talked about a little bit, who's on her fourth property plus the 18 unit. She's also from Maryland and she's in the military there. And that was the same reason she came to the mastermind. She's like, I can't invest where I live. It's crazy. It's too expensive. So anyway, what I'll tell you is that the BRRRR strategy, is it hard to initiate out of state? No, not at all. It's the exact same process you would do if the property was right there in your market, if you do it the way that we teach you to do it, which is with all the checks and balances, using a team and really leading your team through the process. But no, there is nothing difficult about doing the BRRRR strategy remotely compared to locally. No matter what, you're dealing with a contractor. That's what's hard. But it doesn't matter where the property is. So if you live in an area where the property value is outrageous and you can't get going in a deal, then just scrap trying to do that and wasting more time that you can't get started, and just get started. Go to a market where the numbers are calmer and get a deal. Because once you get the first one under your belt, even if it's not a home run, once you get the first one under your belt, the second one comes so much easier. And then the third one, and then they start really rolling. Sherry, how would you recommend finding contractors to interview? I haven't contracted tons yet, but the ones I have contacted are the work with homeowners type of contractors, hence booking months out. How do you find the contractors that work with investors? Hence, you need them starting right after closing. I feel like I'm wasting a lot of time looking in the wrong places. I believe it's in the managing contractors masterclass. I wish I could remember if that's where I show you where to find contractors. If not, actually, no, it is, because I literally just took some slides out of there for a presentation that I did last night. So if you go contact Michael, ask him for a link to the managing contractors masterclass. And I believe in that masterclass, I go through where to find contractors and even show you one of the website's house and like where you click specifically to get it. What it comes down to, Sherry, is you're just going to be making a lot of phone calls. So just like get square with that. You're gonna make a lot of phone calls because most of them are not going to be a fit. That's fine. You're just like, yeah, no. Okay, there's a yes. Cool. Add them to my list. No. Okay, there's a yes. Add them to my list. Okay, so just be okay with making lots of phone calls and disqualifying the majority of them. And out of that, you'll pull your little group. But there's some good training there. And then once you watch that, if you're still like unsure, circle back around with me and I'll see if I can point you in the right direction. But I think that's going to answer your question. So, all right. Well, it's been an amazing hour and 47 minutes with you guys. I love that you chose to spend your afternoon and evening with us. Like, we honor that and thank you. Yeah, I just want to remind you guys that we have the Ask Us Anything next week at 4 p.m. So we'll be live on the Facebook group. We'd love to see you guys there. And in the meantime, just keep getting out there and keep taking one step at a time. And of course, if you want some help and you want to find out about Mastermind, obviously reach out so that we can tell you what that looks like and learn more about you and go from there. Anyway, you guys have an amazing week and we'll see you soon. Bye.